Up next, medicine in the 19th century. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Gail Street, and this is Paths to the Present. Nestled on the grounds of the Belle Dawson Historical Park in Rockville is the Stonestreet Museum of 19th century medicine. This tiny place was once a doctor's office situated in the center of old Rockville. Today, it's packed with fascinating artifacts, drawing visitors back in time to the dawn of modern medicine. Today's show explores that museum and introduces you to its namesake, Dr. Edward Stonestreet. But first, try your hand at this history quiz. This item comes to us from the Stonestreet Museum. It's a medical device that was patented in 1899. Only 6 inches tall and very ornate, it was probably employed at home and then displayed while not in use. At the bottom is a mini oil lamp with an adjusting dial. A milk glass shade shielded the flame which sits below this metal dish. Think you know what it is? Stay tuned. I'll give you the answer at the end of the show. In the 1800s, before hospitals, emergency medical technicians, pharmacies, and even dentists, doctors were all things to all people. They acted as physician, surgeon, pharmacist, and even first responder to an emergency. Traveling by horse and buggy on rutted dirt roads, they made house calls at any hour of the day or night. One such doctor lived and worked right here in Rockville. Dr. Edward Stonestreet began practicing medicine in 1852, serving this primarily farming community until he died in 1903. Today, he's remembered not only by the medical museum that bears his name, but also by the volunteer efforts of Clarence Hickey. Since 1998, Clarence has donned period dress to become Dr. Stonestreet for museum patrons, school groups, and community events. Over time, he researched whatever he could find about the doctor, resulting in a book chronicling the life and times of Dr. Stonestreet.
Dr. Edward Elisha Stonestreet was a local physician. He wanted to serve his community, and the words he used was he wanted to discharge his humanitarian service until the day he died. And that's exactly what he did. He finished medical school in 1852 in Baltimore, came home to Rockville, and then served for almost the next 52 years serving the community. And he gave a lot back to the community, asking nothing in return. He would serve and help anyone who needed his help, regardless of who they were or whether they could pay.
In the latter half of the 18th century, only about 200 people lived in the town of Rockville. Most of the doctor's clients were farmers living outside of town. Using a horse and buggy that looked something like this, Dr. Stonestreet paid house calls whenever he was needed.
He actually practiced in 3 different locations. He had this little room was his central medical office. He kept his records here, his journals and ledgers. He made his medications here. He would see people who could come here for a couple of hours during the day. Mostly he was out, but if he needed to do surgery and it could be planned, he did that in his home. And that's the way it was then. So he would do surgery in that surgical suite in his home. He would serve patients here, and mostly he was out in the community helping where he was needed, treating injuries, treating illnesses, helping deliver babies. And he did that for 51 years.
Less than 10 years after setting up practice, war descended on the county. Dr. Stonestreet was pressed into service.
During the American Civil War in the 1860s, Dr. Stonestreet had 2 roles. The first role was in the summer and fall of 1862. He served as one of Montgomery County's 2 examining surgeons performing physical exams on the draftees and the volunteers, the recruits for the Union Army. He also served 2 4-month terms as acting assistant surgeon with the Union Army.
This building was the county courthouse at the time. It was located just a few blocks from the Stonestreet property. During the Civil War, it became the site of a temporary 350-bed hospital supervised by Dr. Stonestreet. Here, soldiers wounded at the Battle of Antietam received their follow-up care. Throughout his life, Edward Stonestreet showed his humanitarian spirit in multiple ways.
He was the physician to the almshouse, the poorhouse. He served the Rockville commissioner, the town council. He was the first health officer in Montgomery County in response to a state of Maryland law.
And when he passed away, the entire community mourned the loss.
When he died in 1903, the obituary in the Montgomery Sentinel about Dr. Stonestreet ended with the line, his death is regarded as a public bereavement. He was so loved by the community. When he died, the whole community mourned because of the life he led and what he did, asking for very little in return. And this little building memorializes not only the quality of that life, but that era. And it helps us to bridge all that and bring a bit of the past to the present and understand how one life well lived can affect many and make a real difference.
Now we turn from the man to the place. The Stonestreet Museum of 19th Century Medicine began as the one-room medical office for Dr. Edward Stonestreet. Dating to about 1850, it originally stood on the Stonestreet family property right in the center of town. We're lucky that this building wasn't destroyed during Rockville's era of urban renewal. After World War II, the medical office was moved to the old agricultural fairgrounds, Richard Montgomery High School today. There it was used for the Firemen's Carnival as a ticket office. In 1977, it was donated to the city and moved to the Belle Dawson Historical Park, where it stands today. Fully restored and in very good shape, this little museum chronicles the development of early medical science. On December 4th of 2009, a group of fourth graders from Oakview Elementary School in Silver Spring visited the museum. Dr. Edward Stonestreet himself, played by Clarence Hickey, welcomed them and showed them around.
Well, good morning and welcome. This is the Stonestreet Museum of 19th Century Medicine. It's a big, long name for a little tiny place. It's called the Stonestreet Museum because this was a doctor's office, and the doctor who was here was Dr. Edward Stonestreet. It really is a museum to 19th century medicine in general, and it shows through the artifacts how the practice of medicine changed from about the middle of the century until the turn of the 1900s, and how the practice of medicine went from heroic procedures and bleeding and things like that to being very scientific and biological, and how that happened, the dawn of modern medicine, the last half of the 1800s, which was influenced by the Civil War and some of the medical practices there. And those things are all captured in this little museum in a nice, small, intimate way. And when this was the doctor's office, the stove that's in the back used to be right here, right where I'm standing, and the stovepipe went up and went over to the chimney. And that little stove would burn wood or coal, and that's what heated this little room in the wintertime. There's no electricity then. Most physicians of that era had their medical practices in their home. They would dedicate the first floor of the home or several rooms. Dr. Stonestreet had this little medical office, and now it is one of only a handful remaining in America that are 1800s, 19th century medical offices that are one-room standalone offices. And so it's actually quite unique. And this was an Army surgical kit. And for example, during the war, if a soldier was shot in the arm, and maybe the bullet broke the bones in the arm, and the doctors back then didn't know quite how to fix that, like they do today, then they might amputate that part, close off the wound, and stop the soldier from bleeding in order to save his life. That's what this was about. It sounds gruesome, but it was about saving soldiers' lives. Like our troops today, who are out defending us around the world, if they need help, medical help near the battlefield, we offer them the best medical care in the world. And that best medical care started during the Civil War with things like this and young people like Dr. Stonestreet.
The tiny room is lined with display cases, each filled with artifacts used by doctors in the second half of the 1800s. There are surgical instruments of all kinds, old-fashioned eyeglasses and hearing aids, tools for making medicine, and devices used to examine patients. Most everything inside was donated to the museum, but there's one small case in the corner devoted to items that actually belonged to Dr. Stonestreet. Medical knowledge radically changed during the 51 years that Dr. Stonestreet practiced medicine. This museum helps illustrate the new technologies being employed, as well as those that were left behind.
And these are probably the only things in this museum that aren't real. What are they supposed to be? Yeah. Leeches. Very good. What are leeches?
Leeches are
What are they?
leeches are like a kind of bug
Yeah.
that suck your blood.
Yeah.
But before they didn't have shots, so they used leeches to check your blood.
Yeah, very good. Exactly right. This was using leeches was an old medical procedure that had been used for hundreds of years. And in the 1800s, some doctors were still using this, but they were learning about new scientific and biological things in medicine, and they stopped doing this. When we look back to the past and describe the past, that helps us in the future. And if we're thinking about the future of our community and what we'd like it to be, we need to learn from the past, I think. And so looking the part makes me feel the parts too sometimes. And I have to admit that sometimes I really get into it, and it's hard to break out sometimes. And I have, as a result, tried in several ways to kind of walk in Dr. Stonestreet's steps.
Clarence's work here was recognized last October at the County Executive's Awards for Excellence in the Arts and Humanities. He received the Volunteer Award, but he doesn't do it for the applause. He does it for this museum, a place he believes is so important.
Well, it is important because this little museum is a historic structure that was unique in the community. It was part of that era when doctors made house calls, when there were no hospitals or pharmacies in the community, when doctors were all things to all people. And it was part of the time of the dawn of modern medicine in America, the last half of the 1800s, when young physicians like Edward Stonestreet were learning a lot of new things about human biology and medicine and putting that all to work in a lot of new ways.
The Stonestreet Museum is open to the public Tuesday through Sunday from 12 to 4 p.m. On the second Sunday of every month, Dr. Stonestreet, as played by Clarence Hickey, leads the tours. For more information, visit www.montgomeryhistory.org. So let's see how you made out on the history quiz. This Victorian-era vaporizer was used to convert a medicinal substance into a vapor. An elixir goes into this dish. The oil lamp below is lit and adjusted by this dial. The heat from the lamp would release the drug into the air, which was inhaled by the patient for respiratory relief. For more information about artifacts found in the Historical Society's collection, check out this blog at www.afinecollection.wordpress.com. Well, that's all the time we have for this show. If you have comments for us or ideas for future shows, send an email to paths.present@verizon.net. Be sure to tune in again next time as we follow more paths to the present. See you then.